Hello, everyone, and welcome into Senior Living Live. My name is Melissa. Thank you so much for being part of our webcast here today. We are taking this opportunity to discuss emotional endurance. Our guest, Jennifer Fink, you see her there, is going to tell you what it is and how to build this up for yourself. Jennifer, so great to have you on today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your background.
So I'm going to reference the previous video that we did so that I can maybe expand on my background. But briefly, my mom had Alzheimer's for 20 years. Her mom had vascular dementia for around 15. And my maternal great grandmother also had what they called senile dementia back in the old days. She died before I was born. So I'm not sure they knew what type of dementias were around back then. I'm not that old, but time has gone by. I'm a retired portrait photographer. We had a family business from 1990 to 2005. And I got to experience what it's like to work with somebody whose memory is getting worse. And back in, the early aughts, people didn't talk about memory loss. People weren't as aware of it as we are now, which we still need a lot more education. And so that's kind of what I'm here to help provide today, I hope. And other than that, I am a golden retriever owner, lover, whatever, caregiver for dogs. I like to travel. I live an hour south of Lake Tahoe, so that's a new situation for us. So we're, in later stages of life, we're traveling more and trying to enjoy life before it's a lot harder.
Yeah, you just got a lot of bonus points for the golden retriever part from a lot of our viewers. So excellent stuff there. And your previous video was about how to put together a care team for somebody who has or is suffering from dementia. So you'll want to check that video out from Jennifer as well. So today, this is about emotional endurance. So what exactly is that, Jennifer?
Well, you've heard the phrase when when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And emotional endurance is simply the ability to keep moving forward despite tremendous obstacles. And as I mentioned in the previous video and frequently on my own show, most of us end up caregivers because of some medical emergency, some emergency like dad got lost coming home from work that he's been doing for 30 years. Mom got lost going to the nail salon that's a mile away from home. Grandma fell, these kind of things. Nobody plans on doing this, which is something we should all probably change because 70% of us are going to need care before we die. And we don't have time to get into why you should not assume that you're going to be part of the 30%. That's a whole different topic.
Of course, yeah. So when we talk about this, it sounds like something that you would be able to build. Building up that resiliency within yourself when things get extremely overwhelming or difficult in the situations that you just discussed, such as caring for a loved one with a life-limiting disease. How can people begin to build this? What are sort of the building blocks for emotional endurance?
Well, to back up half a step, we need emotional endurance because, we all go through really challenging times in life. And generally we know that these times will end, but with a life-limiting disease, and it doesn't even have to be a dementia-causing disease, it could be somebody that has cancer, but especially somebody whose memory capacities and physical capacities, they lose these capacities slowly over time. We need to be able to tap into this emotional endurance so that we can be in there for the long haul, because we don't want to poop out and not be able to take care of the person that we're taking care of. Or, in my dad's case, my dad passed away before my mom. And I think a lot of it was because he was just physically and emotionally exhausted. So he really needed to hear this. So this is for all the dads out there that need to hear this. So we need to build up you asked us how to build it up, but let me say we need to learn how to deal with our emotions so that we don't become so overwhelmed that we can't, continue doing all the things that we need to do. There's a lot of signs that we need to focus on our emotions, but I know our time is short, so I'm going to skip those and go right into creating emotional endurance. And some of the early steps to create emotional endurance is to educate yourself. As we mentioned in the previous video, this is something I've also learned from one of my past guests. I didn't mention her particularly in the last episode, but she actually voluntarily married her husband knowing he had Parkinson's disease. And I'm still astounded at that choice. But they discussed how to manage caregiving together. And that was really helpful. And obviously, the only way they could do that is to educate themselves on what to expect. And obviously, in their case, it was Parkinson's disease. With my case, I needed to learn a lot more about Alzheimer's a lot sooner than I did. The second thing, and it goes right back to the previous video that we did, is finding support in the early stages of any dementia causing disease. It's a whole lot easier than the middle or the later stages. And I think we kind of give ourselves a good thumbs up, pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we got this covered. I'm doing a good job, and you probably are. But that bus is around the corner about to run over you with some unpleasant surprise. There's other ways of doing it. A lot of people find support, obviously from outside, like we discussed in setting up a care team, but you can set up, journal. I've had a lot of guests that have turned their journals into books, and it's amazing when you read some of these books, journal turned books, you can kind of sometimes see them working through emotions. So I think that helps. It's not something I ever did. Sometimes I regret it. I mentioned a minute ago, we're really good about giving ourselves credit because we're doing a good job for somebody we love. And, nobody asked us to. We just stepped up because, we're such great people, which I am not criticizing any of those emotions. They're all important. And I am fully in the belief that we should find gratitude every day, but we should also find something to be proud of ourselves every day. Because, we do a lot of good stuff every day, even if we're not caregiving. And then, so you want to give yourself credit. You also want to analyze your beliefs. So I've seen a lot of caregivers who they just get so tired and so exasperated that they start thinking like, I can't do this, and this is never going to end. And why is this so awful? We just go down the negative rabbit hole, which I can be guilty of. That, it's dealing with somebody who can't remember that you just answered that question 15 times in the last 10 minutes. That takes a toll on us emotionally and mentally. And so, if you've ever felt like, this is never going to end, I'm always going to be doing this, you're kind of setting yourself up for a lot more, difficulty, because you're just kind of allowing all the negative to come to the surface. And some other ways of, creating emotional endurance is to take action. Sometimes, you get a diagnosis like Alzheimer's, and like for our family, it was like, holy crap, we've already gone through this with one grandmother. Now we got to go through with a mother. It's, oh my God. And they overlapped for a while. So, it would have been easy to kind of just like go into paralysis. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Totally normal emotional state. But you really want to take some action. You want to set up a care team. You want to talk to your loved one before they cannot articulate their desires and their needs, and say, like my mom always said, I don't want to be a burden to you girls, but I want to live in my home forever. Well, those were mutually exclusive. And by the time we got to the point where, I would have wanted to say, well, those are mutually exclusive. How do you suggest, what would you do to resolve that problem? There was no way my mom would understand that question, much less have an answer. But if we had been able to do that 10 years earlier, say, hey, mom, what if dad dies first? And, you can't live alone. What options would you want us to consider? And maybe we should go look at memory care places and see, what you think, because maybe they're not as bad as, you're thinking. They have improved. Yes, they're not cheap, but how do you want your last few years to happen? Do you want family breaking their necks to take care of you? Or, you can at least ask. And then you also know that you know what they wanted, and you've discussed it, and you're not making the difficult decision like I had to do. It was like, nope, we're moving you to memory care. I don't care what you want. So take action. You want to plan as much as possible. Again, ask people, that have been on this journey longer than you. Ask them what the next step is. Ask doctors, what do you think the next phase might look like? What should I expect? You're kind of building your emotional armor by, asking. Like, if okay, well, she might be plateaued for a few years, but these are the things you want to look for, because these will be signs of a significant change in her abilities. And then you can, you're not caught off guard, which nobody wants to be caught off guard. Becoming a caregiver does not mean your needs no longer matter, which it's really easy to make their needs so much more important than ours. You have no idea how long your caregiving journey will last. I love to tell people my mom had Alzheimer's for 20 years. So this is June of 2023. Please rub your crystal ball and tell me what June of 2043 will look like. When I'll be in my 80s, I think. No, 70s. And you have no clue. We have no clue what next week looks like. So, and we think we have a clue, but we don't. So, plan ahead, learn as much as you can. These are ways that you can kind of protect yourself from those sudden blows that are going to happen. You also want to acknowledge your feelings. There's days you're going to be mad at the world, maybe even mad at your loved one. There's other days when you're like, I just can't deal with this. You're totally ambivalent. Anxiety, you probably have all of those in one day. And all of these emotions are totally valid. You want to acknowledge them. You want to acknowledge that these feelings, and then we're making plans again. You want to make a plan to deal with them so they don't become a problem. Like for me, I would visit my mom on Mondays, and I knew if I pushed it too long, I always felt guilty because with my schedule still running a business from home, it was really hard to like carve out other afternoons to go spend time with her, because it was just, I'd come home and I was so mentally exhausted. I couldn't do the simplest of things. And I had to be careful not to overdo it for her, but also not overdo it for me, because I would have times when I'd wake up the next day and I literally felt like Eeyore with the gray cloud over my head. And it's kind of hard to make beautiful family portraits when you just feel like the world hates you. It's kind of hard to pull those positive family feelings out when that's what you're dealing with. And you also want to make sure, I kind of touched on this just a second ago, that you focus on yourself as well. You want to try to avoid exhaustion, both mentally and physically. Because if you're like, I knew if I got tired or if I was stressed, my mom would pick that up in a heartbeat, and then she would be cranky and hard to deal with. So it was never a good thing. If you're cranky, bored, frustrated, and you're impatient with your loved one, all you're going to do is create more headaches and problems for you. They're going to be unhappy. The feelings that you're giving them, especially if they're in the later stages, is I don't want to be around this person. They're like, they're negative. They give off bad vibes. I don't want to be around the bad vibes. And that just makes caregiving that much more difficult. And I'm not suggesting that balancing your needs and your loved one's needs is easy, but it's something that you seriously, seriously have to, to take into consideration, like if not daily, well, if not hourly, then at least daily. One of the things that I've seen a lot lately is, I like to work with a to-do list, very good at balancing my days with my to-do list. And there's a lot of people that are like, what's on your to-do list that just really doesn't have to get done? And it's like, I look at my to-do list and go, well, I wish I had some of those things on there. But when you're caregiving, there are probably a lot of things that you just don't have to worry about. Like don't stress yourself out if the tables are getting dusty, or, I've had between 1 and 3 Goldens for 30 years. So there's always hair on the floor, and I'm kind of a neat freak, but I'm not going to vacuum every day. I don't brush the dog every day. It's just like, there's just certain things that just don't need to happen all the time. So, give yourself some slack. You want to maintain your outside interests. This is especially, it's especially true for everybody, but it's really crucial for somebody that's in the sandwich generation. If you're got a career, you're taking care of children, you're taking care of a parent, that's just a lot. But you want to make sure that, you're participating in your kids' functions, because they're not going to have those forever. You want to maintain your career. I recently had a conversation with an attorney who was a single mom of, I think the boys were 5 and 6 when she started taking care of her mom. And obviously being an attorney is not exactly just, a slack job that you can just kind of phone it in. And she actually had changed jobs right before starting to take care of her mom. And she went back to the old job because she knew the people knew her. They were familiar with her work ethic and all the things about her. So the change in her family situation wasn't quite as jarring, and it didn't require as much learning curve for the old firm. And so those are the kind of decisions, sometimes you just have to make. you know, if you're in school, fine, cut back to part-time. If you're going to school part-time, maybe take one class. Do what you can to maintain your goals and desires, your hobbies, your friendships. All of these are going to be important. I know a lot of caregivers who, their lives just get taken over by caring for somebody with a form of dementia, and then that person dies, and then they're literally adrift. They really don't have close friends anymore. They've lost touch with their hobbies. Now they're 10 or 15 years older, and they're like, now what am I going to do for work? I mean, they're literally just left floating in the air. All their whole reason for being is gone. And that's a really, really hard thing. My mom died right at the start of the pandemic. We had downsized our home, moved into a rental while we decided what we were doing. And then poof, the whole world shut down. My mom died. It was a whole lot. And there was times I went into a panic mode trying to figure out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I realized I don't have to decide right now. So I gave myself slack. Still trying to figure it out 3 years later, but that's okay. We moved. I'm figuring it out. It's a work in progress, but I wish I had maintained some of the things that I just mentioned beforehand. The transition would have been better had the pandemic not happened. There was just too much life happening all at once for me.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Be kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, we answered a lot there, I think, and, I had questions ready for you, but you got to all of them. And
Sorry, that was a monologue.
Except for this one, and that is any additional literature or places that you can guide your viewers to, whether it's websites, something that maybe a book on Amazon they can purchase that sort of follows the same mantra of everything that you have told us today in terms of take care of yourself before you take care of others. And hey, emotional endurance, we can all continue to build that up within ourselves.
Well, I'm going to shout out the book, Love, Dignity, and Parkinson's. She's the one that talked to her husband, who she married after he had already been diagnosed with Parkinson's, on navigating caregiving together. But my favorite resource is All's Authors. So it's alzauthors.com. If you need a book on any kind of dementia, be it a memoir, kind of a how-to children's books, they've got it. I think they have over 300 authors now. They've been around for 8 years. They are a fantastic resource of all of the founding authors. There's 6 of them, I think, 6 or 7. I've interviewed all but one, and I think she snuck in at the end because I had originally interviewed all of them, and they're all fascinating women with all their own stories. So somebody within All's Authors will have a very similar experience to you. You can read their book and get what you need, and they're just one of my favorite resources.
Great. And we can consider you a resource too. Where can people get in touch with you and listen to your podcasts?
Well, Fading Memories podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. I do have a YouTube channel as well, in case you like to watch these Zoom conversations. I do also post some other short, fun kind of videos on there. Occasionally you'll see the golden retriever. But you can also get a hold of me at hello@fadingmemoriespodcast.com, which is also the website name. And I'm always here to answer whatever questions you have. And if I don't have the answer, I probably have talked to somebody who will.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this was another of your second interviews that we've done with you today. Another great topic, another great discussion. I think you're going to enlighten some people with this broadcast, as well as the other one about creating a care team. Jennifer, thank you so much for being our guest.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And if you enjoyed this video with Jennifer, want to catch her other one about putting together a care team for a loved one living with dementia, head on over to our website. You can find all of that there, as well as other videos all about senior living at www.seniorlivinglive.com. As always, we appreciate you taking the time to be a part of our conversation. Have a great day, everybody.